Well, the U.S. men's national team opened their 2022 World Cup campaign with a 1-1 draw against Wales on Monday afternoon. Timothy Weah giving the U.S. the lead in the first half before Gareth Bale tied it for Wales from the penalty spot late in the second half. Weah, the first player to score against Wales at a World Cup since Pelé, and for Wales, it's their first point at a World Cup since June 17th of 1958. They will now prepare to face Iran on match day 2. The U.S. will face England in their next game. Both of those games coming up on Friday. As you take a look at the full match stats, pretty even in terms of what we saw in the overall game. The U.S. had the bulk of the possession and control of the match in the first half before kind of dipping into a more defensive setup in the second half to try and hold the lead. And it did not work as Wales managed to get that late goal. Wales tallying one more shot than the Americans, 3 on target. But the U.S. a little bit aggressive in this match with 4 yellow cards, but they did hold the bulk of the possession, 47-33. All right, let's bring in CBS Sports soccer analyst Grant Wahl, who was at the game today. Grant, I guess I'll just start by getting your primary takeaway from this 1-1 result for the United States versus Wales.
I'll be straight. This feels like 2 points lost by the United States, which hasn't won many World Cup games over the years in the modern era. And that would have been a huge 3 points that would have really set up the U.S. well to get out of the group. Now this is going to be a total dogfight with Wales. And, you look at the U.S. performance, and 3 points, I think, would have been appropriate out of this. They did run out of steam a little bit in the second half, but uncharacteristic by Walker Zimmerman to dive in the penalty box on Gareth Bale in that situation. And the penalty obviously was converted by Bale. So it's going to be frustrating for the U.S. because they feel like, I'm sure, that they should have won this game.
Yeah, 82nd minute goal by Gareth Bale to tie it, the 41st goal for him with Wales that ends the 1-1 result, certainly giving Wales a good point. As you mentioned, though, it does feel like 2 points lost for the United States. Grant, I wanted to get your thoughts just kind of how they played that game in the second half. Greg Berhalter making the bulk substitutions, but it also seemed like the U.S. had control of this game in the first half. They were getting good chances. They were getting good possession. They really had Wales on the back foot. But in the second half, they seemed to go into that defensive shell and kind of let Wales come at them a little bit.
Yeah, and I think some guys tired out a little bit here. Weston McKennie and Serginho Dest started this game, but they're not 90 minutes fit, and they came off. You would have thought the U.S. had depth here, some firepower to bring on, and they did. They did bring on Brendan Aronson. I thought it was interesting. Gio Rand did not come on at all, which makes me wonder if he has some sort of injury. But the U.S. had opportunities in the first half, but especially in the second half, to make it 2-0. And essentially put the game away, and they just weren't precise enough. They didn't execute well enough in the attacking third. That left things open, and Wales started to push forward a little bit and at least get the ball in the U.S. end of the field. That's what led to the penalty in the end.
Yeah, U.S. were the favorites coming into this match. A draw was sitting at plus 200, and that's how it turns out. Okay, so for Wales, what impressed you about the performance that you saw from them?
Well, I thought they had a lot of, they were very resolved out there in responding well to the U.S. goal. They didn't panic. They didn't let the U.S. get the second goal when that could have happened. And they kept plugging away. Gareth Bale hasn't played 90 minutes in forever. And I'm very impressed that he was able to stay on the field for all 90 minutes and convert a tremendously important penalty in the 82nd minute to get Wales a point. And now this is anybody's group, I think, behind England.
So now they have that game against England coming up on Friday, do the United States. Give us a quick preview, your thoughts based on what you saw today from both the U.S. and England, how you think that game's going to shape up.
England was terrific, 6-2 winners against Iran, but it's hard to take out of that exactly how good England was because Iran was pretty poor, in my opinion. I thought this U.S. performance overall was pretty good. And so the result doesn't necessarily reflect that. The U.S. has never lost to England in a World Cup, and I know that's a small sample size, but there's no reason the U.S. should feel like they can't go toe-to-toe with England. They can't get a result against England and go into that game with some confidence and also knowing that if you can get a point out of that game, that might make the difference in this group if you're battling head-to-head with Wales.
Grant, when you're looking at that in terms of a tactical setup for Greg Berhalter and how he kind of handles what Gareth Southgate has at his disposal versus what Berhalter has at his disposal, what kind of a setup do you expect the U.S. to come out with for that game?
I don't expect any significant personnel changes. We'll see if there's any injuries coming out of this game. Like the main guys, we know who they are on this U.S. team. I don't expect the U.S. to have the majority of possession against England the way they did tonight against Wales. And we'll see if the U.S. might even feel a bit more comfortable in that position of being able to counter. I still feel like the best U.S. performance of the last 2 years was against Mexico at home in World Cup qualifying. And that wasn't a game when the U.S. dominated possession. Mexico controlled the ball and the U.S. just struck on the counter and was really precise in how they created chances when the opportunities arose. And I think England's a better team than Mexico, obviously. But when you're playing a team that's going to outpossess you, I think the U.S. isn't necessarily in a bad spot with that.
Grant, looking forward, I mean, if Wales get a result versus Iran, that's going to put them on 4 points. If the U.S. managed to get a point versus England, that's going to put them on 2, basically bringing it down to that final match day. I mean, when you look at how things could stretch out for the U.S. over the course of the group, over the course of the next couple of weeks, I mean, how bad is this draw?
It could be pivotal and decisive that the U.S. didn't get 3 points tonight when they probably should have in the end. There's 2 more games in this group to play, 2 more match days, but you look at your opportunities and the margins are so thin in the World Cup. And I think the U.S. is just going to have psychologically to get past this in the next couple of days. They've got a game in just a few days against England. Quick turnaround times. Don't wallow in this. Deal with it. Look at the positives. Look at what can be better and try and get a result against England, because that's going to be absolutely key at this point.
CBS Sports soccer analyst Grant Wahl joining us from Al Rayyan Stadium in Qatar, where the United States just completed a 1-1 draw in their opener versus Wales at the 2022 World Cup. Grant, thanks for hopping on with us and providing us with your post-match thoughts. Next up, the United States taking on England. That is going to be a pivotal game, especially considering the draw. The United States would have liked to get the 3 points here. Instead, they get the 1, which means it's probably going to come down to the final match day, depending on what happens with England. But you look at the results against England in the modern era, there's only one win there, and that was back in 1993 in Foxborough, a 2-0 result. They did get a 1-1 draw versus England back in 2010. So, in terms of the Group B schedule, the 1-1 draw with Wales gives the U.S. 1 point alongside Wales. England lead the group a full 3 points after that 6-2 win over Iran. That is the next game for the U.S. coming up on Friday, and then they will finish the group stage versus Iran in Doha on the 29th.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.